At her sister's wedding, one woman was mocked for being just paperwork. Moments later, the groom stood at attention and saluted her. What hidden story turned silence into honor? This isn't just about rank, it's about dignity, sacrifice, and what we choose to remember. It started with laughter, the kind that bubbles up at weddings, light and harmless, or so it seemed. I had just lifted my glass ginger ale, the only thing I trusted since retirement, when the groom interrupted the room with a snap. "Madam General." The stem of my glass trembled slightly. Around us, the soft clink of silverware stopped. One of the servers dropped a spoon onto the floor with a note that sounded louder than the chapel bells. My sister Mirabelle blinked. Her lips parted mid-sentence. For a moment, the scent of magnolia blossoms hanging above us turned bitter in the back of my throat. Rowena had been sitting near the rear as usual, a quiet, unassuming fixture in the family, always present, yet somehow overlooked, like the tablecloths no one remembers setting. She was dressed in a slate-gray dress, polished but plain, with her hair pinned back neat, but not fussy. I'd noticed her slipping a small, dented tin box under her chair when she arrived. Familiar, though I hadn't seen it in years. Not since Kandahar. Not since the long nights when that kit sat beside her cot, stocked with more hope than morphine. Until that moment, I'd almost forgotten she was there. Mirabelle's toast had been going well enough. She always was good with crowds, sharp tongue, quick wit. And of course, she said with a laugh, eyes scanning the room to all those who helped us put today together. Even Rowena, our beloved paperwork queen. A few chuckles. Clinton, ever the charming sidekick, leaned into his cue. She could organize an invasion, in triplicate. That got the room. Laughter bloomed across the tablecloths as if they all shared a joke only they understood. Everyone except the groom. Clinton had paused mid-laugh. His jaw worked as though he were chewing a memory. Then slowly he turned toward Rowena. His spine straightened. The laughter drained from his face. He approached 2 strides, then 3. His shoes crushed a fallen magnolia petal, smearing brown into the white canvas floor. "Permission to speak, ma'am," he said, not smiling now. Rowena tilted her head, puzzled. He raised his hand in a crisp, deliberate salute. "Madam General." No one breathed. Even the jazz trio stumbled to a halt. The saxophonist mouthing, "What the hell?" The silence pressed down. I felt the weight of every conversation from earlier, the jokes at the buffet, the offhand remarks about old admin types and support staff never leaving base. My own comments came back to me, flippant remarks tossed out with cocktail peanuts. Rowena didn't speak. She only stared at Clinton, eyes unreadable. Then she stood, brushed her skirt smooth, and bent to retrieve the tin box from under her chair. The metal made a dull sound against the floor, a ghost of the past echoing through starched linens and clinking champagne flutes. I stepped toward her. "Rowena," I said, but she didn't look up. Outside the tent, the sky had deepened. The reception lights cast long shadows across the grass where the edges of the tent flapped against the evening breeze. "I'll walk you to your car," I offered. She nodded once without meeting my gaze. We walked slowly, the gravel crunching beneath our shoes. As we neared the lot, she paused to adjust the strap on her purse. That's when I saw her hand dart to her cheek. A subtle wipe. Not dramatic. No trembling lip or shaky breath. Just a single swipe with the side of her finger, as if brushing away a stray thought. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. The tin box glinted in her other hand, scratched but intact, its corners worn smooth by time and duty. I hadn't known then what it held, or why she'd brought it. But I would. God help me, I would. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there, the word general echoing in the hollows of my ribs, the way it hung in the air like incense after a funeral. Rain ticked against the roof like a metronome for memories I hadn't meant to summon. Evelyn was already asleep, her breathing steady beside me. I tried matching its rhythm, but my mind had its own pulse now, driven by a saluted word, and the tin box resting just below our coats in the mudroom. When I carried it in, Rowena had been too flustered, or maybe too careful to notice she'd left it behind. I hadn't meant to keep it, just meant to return it. But here I was, an hour past midnight, standing in my garage with the old thing on my workbench, feeling like a teenager caught snooping through a parent's drawer. The box wasn't locked, not really, just latched. I hesitated longer than I expected. The metal was pitted and matte, the corners dulled. Not military issued. More like something she might have picked up at a base thrift store. But it had survived time. Dust lingered in the seams, and one of the hinges groaned as I lifted the lid, slow as a confessional. The smell hit first paper and metal old antiseptic. Then contents. A black and white photograph lay on top, its edges curled. Rowena stood between two Marines' arms around their shoulders. All three looked tired. The Marines were bloodied one with gauze taped over an eye. Rowena wasn't smiling, but her eyes held something steady. Something I remembered from the worst months in Kandahar. Underneath was an access badge split down the center like a snapped cracker. I picked it up carefully. Medical Ops, Night Shift, Level 3. The photo on it was hers younger, with her hair tied back. A crack ran through her name. The lamination had bubbled. Then a folded slip of paper. Thin like requisition stock. I smoothed it open on the bench, Transfer Class Delta Medcom Unit 12. Signed A. Velicott. The signature was faint but legible. I hadn't heard that name in years. My fingers traced the ink like it might speak. Velicott wasn't he the one who... I didn't finish the thought. Behind me, the floor creaked. Evelyn stood at the doorway, arms wrapped around herself in my old navy sweatshirt. "You still up?" she asked. Her voice padded with sleep. I turned the badge over. She left this behind. Evelyn walked to the edge of the stairs, blinking. "Wasn't she admin?" "That's what they told us," I murmured. Outside, the rain softened to a mist. My radio low on the shelf buzzed with old jazz-muted trumpet and vinyl hiss. I lifted the photo again, turning it over this time. On the back, someone had scribbled in black pen, "Kandahar Airstrip 2018. We came back because of her." The handwriting wasn't Rowena's. I knew hers tight and slanted. This was looser all caps, like a Marine's field scribble. I sat back on the work stool, heart-chewing through a rhythm I couldn't control. That badge. The night shift clearance. Velicott's name. And that phrase, "we came back because of her." I stared at the tin box, now open, now breathing. She hadn't hidden it. But she hadn't explained it either. At 2:15 a.m., I sat in my truck, parked halfway down the drive where the house lights couldn't reach. I pulled out my phone, typed Velicott Medcom, Unit 12, Kandahar Evacuations. Searched. Waited. The Bay Pines Veterans Home looked more like a sleepy citrus grove than a medical facility. A rusting mailbox leaned toward the main walkway like it was eavesdropping. The sign outside was half-faded, Bay Pines, Welcome Home Warriors. I pulled up just before noon. The heat had already settled into the porch rails. Cicadas creaked overhead like some forgotten radio trying to find signal. A row of old men, some in wheelchairs, others hunched on benches, lined the shaded portico. 2 of them played checkers without speaking, save the occasional throat clearing. Dr. Velicott. I asked a nurse at the door, a wiry woman with tired eyes. You, Clement, she replied. Her name tag read, Rami. She didn't smile. He's expecting me. She gave a short nod. He's on the porch. Don't push him. He's clear most days, but, you know, time has its toll. Dr. Amos Velicott sat at the far end of the porch in a wooden rocking chair, motionless, except for one hand resting on a glass of sweet tea. The other cradled a newspaper he wasn't reading. He wore a tan cardigan threadbare at the elbows and old military slacks that looked pressed by memory. His eyes flicked up as I approached. You look like her, he said. I'm not blood. He gestured to the rocker beside him. Still, I sat. The wood groaned beneath me. From this angle I could see a row of citrus trees beyond the fence, heavy with fruit, their perfume cutting through the porch's humidity. I pulled the folded transfer slip from my jacket and placed it in his lap. He unfolded it with care like it might tear if breathed on too hard. Where'd you find this? He asked. She left it in a kit, along with a broken night shift badge. Kandahar, 2018. He studied the signature. That's mine, all right. Silence stretched between us. The checker players slapped a piece down hard. One of them muttered a curse. She wouldn't let me stop it, Velicott said finally. His voice was low but steady. Said the silence was better than scandal. I turned to him. What scandal? He leaned back, the rocker groaning. She overrode an order. Clinton, her CO back then, told her to pull our medics from a collapsing safe zone, said the intel was thin, the risk too high. And she went anyway. Dragged 4 corpsmen and 2 Marines with her, rescued 6 wounded, all alive, and they punished her for it. He shrugged. Insubordination. They couldn't court-martial her. It would have exposed the chain of command's hesitation. So they sealed her file, offered a quiet resignation, and Clinton promoted. I let that hang in the air. The smell of oranges drifted again, sharp and bright against the slow decay of the porch. She never told us, I said. She wouldn't. She didn't want the weight passed down. Velicott reached into a canvas satchel beneath his chair and handed me a letter. The envelope was creased and soft edges curling like dry leaves. My name wasn't on it. She left it with me, said if anyone came asking, I should give them this. The paper inside was thick, yellowing slightly. Ink had bled where it folded 3 soft blotches near the middle. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, tight, deliberate, upright, even in resignation. To whom it may concern, this is not a confession. It is not a plea. I did what was needed, and I would do it again. Silence is not surrender, but sometimes it is protection. If this ever comes to light, let it be because someone finally asked the right questions. Below it, no signature. Just a date, April 2019. I read it twice before folding it again carefully. You still think about it? I asked. Velicott chuckled dry as dust. Every damn day. He looked out at the trees, eyes somewhere far past them. "Courage isn't loud," he said. "Sometimes it's a woman in scrubs holding a line nobody else would." The screen door creaked behind us. Nurse Rami poked her head out, gave me a look that said time was up. I stood. Velicott didn't move. As I turned to go, he called out, "She didn't lose her rank, you know." I paused. She gave it up. I didn't speak. Didn't trust myself to. Numbers don't lie, but they do get buried under signatures behind acronyms inside folders named things like PR001 BQ Rev 2. That's where I found the first crack. The Naval Base archives aren't as glamorous as people think. No classified vaults with glowing maps. Just gray carpeting, the smell of dry toner, and a wall of humming server towers that reminded me of a beehive endlessly active, never asking questions. Private Ortiz met me at the front desk. She looked about 20, maybe 21, with eyes too eager and sleeves too short for the cold draft in that bunker. Her voice was clipped, rehearsed. "You're cleared under Commander Rowena Delisep's family directive. Secondary verification filed by Dr. Amos Velicott." She handed me a plastic badge. "Don't wander. The scanners track everything." I nodded more out of habit than caution. The archive room was dim-lit more by the soft amber of outdated monitors than any overhead light. Ortiz led me to Terminal 9C, a quiet corner with 2 cracked keyboards and 1 half-working USB port. "She said you might come one day," Ortiz added, hesitating as she pulled out a chair. "I didn't think it'd be so soon. I didn't ask who she was. I already knew." I logged in. The system chirped, grumbled, then opened a window of fiscal data, a thicket of numbers, authorizations, digital stamps. The email came to mind, buried and billed BCC'd to Velicott, dated May 2019. I searched that title. It popped up under secondary flagged, disposition unresolved. I opened it. If this goes to audit, they'll blame me. That's the design. See the shift from med trauma. Public relations line item. Clinton's fingerprints are there, but scrubbed by rank. Don't dig unless you can finish it. No greeting. No sign-off. Just that signature R. I'd seen it on holiday cards, on birthday gifts to my daughter. And now here, pinned beside a trail of quietly shifted funds. I followed the thread she hinted at. A single reallocation document signed May 12, 2019. $137,000, originally designated for field trauma replenishment, quietly shifted to PR Initiative's Veterans Visibility campaigns. I clicked on the authorizations. 3 signatures. The last one was Rowena's. Ortiz peeked over my shoulder. "That doesn't look like her file." "It's not," I said. "It's his." But they routed it through her, underneath a comment box. Hidden unless expanded manually. Hold this until audit clears. Then blame admin error. CH. The initials chilled me. Clinton Harrow. I clicked the log history. The comment had been deleted, then restored. Then deleted again, finally overwritten by an automated line dated June 3rd, reviewed. No discrepancy. Ortiz pulled up a small stool notepad in hand. She tried to flag it, didn't she? She did more than that. I opened another file, a scanned receipt from 2019, labeled Supply Order K6M, blurry. The ink had smudged near the vendor name, but I could still read the quantities. Hundreds of trauma packs, none of which ever made it to Kandahar according to the later shipping logs. Rowena had signed the order, but the shipping label replaced mid-route, redirected to a PR warehouse in Pensacola. Ortiz pointed to the line notes. She was the scapegoat. They used her to wash it clean, I whispered. She nodded slowly, face pale under the flickering monitor. I leaned back the chair, squeaking. Above the terminal, an old ceiling vent clicked, probably from years of condensation. A coffee ring stained the corner of the printout. It wasn't fresh, but it hadn't disappeared either. Like guilt. Ortiz handed me a clean USB stick. You should take it, in case it goes missing again. I printed the full trail, every order slip, every redirect, every sanitized summary Rowena had been forced to sign. The printer coughed halfway through the toner, leaving a gray smear across Clinton's signature. Fitting. When the last page slid into the tray, I gathered them like evidence from a crime scene, slipped the USB into my pocket. Ortiz asked, "Are you going to the promotion ceremony next week?" I paused. "I am now." I stood behind the podium, a manila envelope in my hand, thick creased at the corners, sealed with a single brass clip. Nobody expected me to open it. I hadn't been listed on the official program, beyond a vague mention as the bride's brother. Just a family cameo, not a disruptor. May in Florida is humid even at 9 in the morning. The main hall at Naval Support Activity, Panama City, had been cooled, but the sweat still gathered along my spine, tracing down beneath the neatly pressed collar of my blazer. Flags draped the walls in alternating rows, American Navy, and the base emblem embroidered in solemn navy and gold. Applause echoed between polished wood panels as the promotion ceremony began. Clinton was already on stage. He looked every inch the model officer medal's shining posture, rigid, cadence perfected. The click of his shoes on the stage sounded like confidence. He launched into a speech about accountability. Our strength as a force, he declared, depends on support units, those who handle the ledgers, the logistics, the long hours that no one writes ballads about. Without them, the battlefield goes dark. We owe them our efficiency, our clarity, our clean books. There was laughter, admiration. A few heads nodded. Rowena sat near the rear, still as an anchor. Her black dress was plain, her hair pinned back. Only the reflection from her glasses moved small flickers of the slide deck's patriotic blue and gold. Clinton was wrapping up when they invited me forward. Clement Harrow Navy veteran and brother of the bride. My shoes didn't click. They scuffed slightly, breaking rhythm on the carpeted stairs. I adjusted the microphone. "Thank you," I began, voice dry. Clinton spoke of clarity, of clean books, of those who work behind the scenes. I held up the envelope. I want to speak of one such person whose story was buried under that very clarity. A ripple moved through the audience. Not a wave, just a tightening. I unclipped the envelope. Inside were 3 documents. I placed them carefully on the velvet podium. The first, Clinton's signed authorization transferring $137,000 from trauma supply to PR campaigns. The signature smeared faintly from a toner error, like it had tried to vanish. The second, Rowena's resignation letter, handwritten, its folds worn thin. The ink had bled at the bottom where the paper had caught moisture, maybe from her hand, maybe from tears. I didn't know. The third A photograph, Rowena in scrub's face, streaked with dirt and blood, kneeling beside two wounded Marines. The air behind her was awash of dust. Kandahar 2018. And paperclipped to it, a thank you note penned in blocky handwriting. You stayed when the others ran. Because of you, I get to see my daughter turn 10. I owe you forever. RJ, 2nd Recon. I read Rowena's resignation aloud, voice steady despite the cracks at the edge. Silence isn't shame, but it shouldn't protect corruption. I chose quiet because the noise was rigged. I chose to leave because staying would mean signing more lies. I was taught to hold the line. So I did. Alone. Gasps. A few whispers. Some eyes darted toward Clinton. He stood motionless, mouth set in a neutral line, but his left hand resting on the podium beside him twitched. I looked toward Rowena. Her gaze didn't flinch. She didn't nod, didn't smile. She simply was. Then a voice from the second row rose, clear, respectful, resonant. "Permission to thank you, ma'am." A Marine in full dress uniform stood straight as a mast and saluted. Rowena blinked just once, then nodded. That was all. Others shifted in their seats. Murmurs rippled. The band hadn't resumed. No one reached for a camera. Then Mirabelle turned to Clinton, sitting now, rigid, jaw tight. "You told me it was just a budget shuffle," she said, voice low but audible. He didn't answer. I gathered the papers back into the envelope, slid them into my satchel. "I thought today was about promotion," I said softer now. "Maybe it still is, but not just of rank." The applause at the end of the ceremony was strained. Some clapped with the flatness of obligation, others with the awkwardness of realization. You could hear the difference. Applause has rhythm when it's sincere. That one ended like a car coasting to empty. An hour later, we were summoned to the boardroom in the west wing of the administration building. Rowena and I walked side by side, her pace steady, her face unreadable. In her right hand, half concealed by her fingers, was the same broken night shift badge. She didn't look at it, but I saw her thumb pass gently over the jagged edge. The base conference room was more silent than solemn. Blinds half drawn, carpet stiff underfoot. A faint smell of stale coffee hung in the air. Forgotten mugs brewed too long. At the far end sat the commanding officer, sleeves rolled pen already poised. To his right, Dr. Amos Vellicott, older but grounded folder under one arm. Clinton sat at the edge of the oval table, posture straight, but eyes unmoored. I stayed standing. Rowena didn't bother sitting either. "You dragged my name through 6 years of silence," she said evenly, looking not at Clinton, but at the CO. "You erased my field history. You scrubbed the citation and buried the report. All because he—" She nodded at Clinton, filed a reprimand. "For insubordination." "I don't remember authorizing a reprimand," Clinton said. Voice clipped. We were following procedure. Vellicott set the folder on the table. He opened it with quiet hands. No flourish. "May 12th, 2018, he said. 4 medics were pulled from an active evac op at Kandahar. Directive signed by then Lieutenant Harrow." He didn't look up. He didn't need to. Rowena countermanded it. Took them back in. They pulled 6 men out alive. 1 died on the chopper. 1's now a school teacher in Biloxi. He slid out a timeline, highlighted, Initialed. This was buried under a lateral transfer, Velicott said, and the reprimand never reached Jag. Instead, her record was sealed. Not flagged, not reviewed, just erased. The commanding officer didn't speak right away. He read the sheet slowly, then folded his hands. "Lieutenant Harrow," he said, turning to Clinton, "did you reclassify trauma budget lines in 2019? Clinton's face twitched. "All reallocations went through the correct." "We have your signature," I cut in. "You funneled supplies into PR." "You left her name on the authorization and made her clean it." Rowena reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out the badge snapped from its lanyard scarred with time and placed it on the table. "I didn't leave the Navy," she said quietly. "I was buried in it." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The room bent around those words. The CO signed something. An order. His pen moved slowly, looping over his own name like a weight being lifted. He turned it toward her. "You are reinstated, effective immediately with full no," she said. Everyone looked up. "I'm not coming back." This wasn't about return. It was about record. "I want it corrected, not replayed." Velicott nodded. The CO paused, then drew a diagonal line across the bottom of the order and wrote a single note, "Declined with honor." As Clinton stood to leave, Mirabelle wasn't waiting outside. She had left earlier, didn't even glance back when he tried to follow her after the ceremony. He hesitated at the door, and just then a junior officer collecting documents leaned over and murmured barely audible, "What else did we forget?" The question didn't seem meant for anyone. It hung there dense as the silence before a storm. Not angry, not accusatory, just aware. A week after the boardroom reckoning, I found Rowena in her backyard, kneeling in the patch of soil near the rusted chain-link fence. The morning sun was already heavy, sagging in the sky like it had skipped spring entirely. The garden was overgrown with wild grass and tufts of mint from a planter that had tipped sideways months ago. She was in loose khakis, an old navy t-shirt, hair tucked into a faded bandana. Dirt smudged the bridge of her nose. When she looked up, her face was tired, but it was the kind of tired that comes with motion, not despair. "You're early," she said, brushing soil from her palms. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, squinting under the brim of my ball cap. "Figured I'd deliver this before breakfast." I reached into the paper bag I carried and drew out the badge now fixed sealed inside a modest black frame. The crack had been bonded invisible unless you knew where to look. The background was plain, just soft velvet navy blue with a brass plate below Rowena Deliceps. Night shift 2018. She didn't take it right away. Her eyes landed on it slowly, as though part of her had expected it, but not yet invited it back. "I thought about tossing it," I said. Then thought better. She nodded, not speaking, and leaned back on her heels. Behind her, on a wooden shelf just outside her sliding door, rested the tin medical kit, still unopened since that day at the wedding, but no longer hidden. It sat between a watering can and a folded quilt. It had a presence now quiet, but settled like a photo you keep on a shelf after finally accepting the story it tells. "I want to build something," Rowena said, "with what's left." I watched her dig a small furrow in the dirt. Beside her knee was a packet of heirloom tomato seeds, the top folded like an old letter. She stood and walked to the patio table. There, weighted by a chipped coffee mug, were 3 letters. Handwritten. I recognized the shape of her script, neat, deliberate, each word balanced like it was standing at attention. The first, she said, tapping the top envelope, is for Corporal Leung. He was one of the 6 evac'd, lost a leg, but stayed funny through it all. The second was addressed to Petty Officer Quinn, her junior medic back then. I never told her I was proud of how fast she triaged that triage. She was 22 and steadier than the CO. The last envelope had no name, just an acronym NGHQ1. That's the NGO regional hub that ignored my plea for trauma supply audits. I'm not mailing it, but I needed to write it. I sat in one of the patio chairs, its plastic frame creaking. Rowena picked up the 3 letters and tied them with a faded red ribbon, then placed them in a small cedar box beside the tin kit. "They're not for closure," she said. "They're just acknowledgments. Not everyone gets a ceremony." She returned to the garden bed and brushed away a layer of mulch. I watched her gently push the seed into the ground, cover it, and press. "You asked me once if I wanted to come back," she said without looking up. "But I never left. I just went quiet." She gestured to a fresh wooden post by the garden's edge on it, a small sign carved with her own name. "The Rowena Fund," I read aloud. "You weren't kidding." She smiled just a sliver. "Grants for medics. No red tape, no PR dinners, just help." Then she turned to me. "I want you to help me set it up, co-sign the charter." I blinked. "Me." "You still speak their language," she said, "and you still believe in order." I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a confession, but I nodded. As I stood to leave, she called out once more. "There's an exhibit next Friday," she said. "Quiet, nothing fancy. Just stories. No uniforms." I turned. She had the framed badge in her hands, now holding it to the light. The repaired seam shimmered like a vein. "Will you speak?" I took a long breath. "Yeah, I think I will." And as I stepped down from her porch, I caught a glimpse of a tomato sprout pushing through the soil, nudging upward like it had something to say. The gallery wasn't big. 5 display panels, some laminated letters, and a bronze plaque that read, "Medics Without Parade." It had once been a reading room tucked in the west wing of the old Panama City Library. Now, at 10:04 on a Saturday morning, the air inside was warm with lemon polish, and a hush only public reverence can breed. I stood just inside the doorway, watching as people drifted past the exhibits, each face pausing at different moments. The young boy in the ROTC uniform stopped longest in front of the cracked badge, Rowena's night shift ID, the edges now preserved in a glass shadow box with a small brass plate below Kandahar 2018. Held the line. She didn't stand next to it. She wasn't even in the center of the room. Rowena had chosen a folding chair near the corner, half lit by a slanted beam of sun. She looked like any visitor, palms folded over her lap, the tin medical kit resting atop a wooden shelf behind her, intact but quiet like it had always been waiting. Lieutenant Lin was the first to speak. Tall, a limp in his right leg, but voice firm. He pointed to a blood-spotted photograph mounted under glass. This one, he said, was the morning after she pulled us out. She was the last one out of the blast zone. Carrie Jenkins herself. The thing is, I didn't even know her rank. I just followed her voice. There were no uniforms today. That was her rule. Just linen shirts, cotton dresses, jeans, and dusty boots. But as Lin finished, I noticed the faint lines of a marine tattoo slip beneath his sleeve. He paused at the end. She never asked for credit. Just a final inventory list and extra gauze. a ripple of laughter brief and warm. I stepped forward, throat dry. Rowena asked me not to speak for her, so I'll just read what she wrote. I pulled a note card from my pocket, her handwriting neat, slightly slanted. Silence isn't shame, but it should never be used to protect corruption. The only rank that lasts is conviction. Thank you for remembering. The final words sat in the air like cotton after rain, soft but heavy. Nobody moved at first. Then one by one visitors stood. Not out of obligation, but instinct. A man near the back straightened and raised his hand in salute. Then a woman next to him. Then two more. Some whispered, some stood without words, but the gesture was the same. Madam General. Someone said quietly, and others echoed. Rowena didn't stand. She didn't wave. She nodded once, her eyes fixed on the boy by the badge. He was still saluting. After the last guest left, the light had turned golden, stretched across the wooden floor like soft brushstrokes. I lingered, walked to the shelf where the tin kit sat. Tucked beneath its base, I slipped a folded note, simple handwritten. I see you now. And I did. Later that evening, as I passed the empty exhibit hall, the scent of lemon polish still lingered, and Rowena's old tin kit caught the fading light like it was breathing. Funny how something once forgotten could become the still point in a turning world. Some honors arrive quietly. Sometimes justice is a folded note slipped under a memory, and dignity. It never needed a rank to stand tall. We forget too quickly who holds the line, but if we pause long enough, we may just remember what kind of courage it takes to stay silent for the right reasons. Has life ever handed you a second chance in disguise? I'd love to hear your story. Feel free to share it below or subscribe if this spoke to you.